I'm Ed Smith, and I'm by training a surveying engineer, but have been a member of the association since I graduated from university, and I think it's an important step in the development of an engineer.
And I'm Brent Smith, Ed's son, and I was president in 2005.
Well, the company that I went to work for early on was called Associated Designers and Inspectors, and they were very strong on their engineers becoming involved in the association. And I guess that's what started me in, and they were always very supportive of my being involved in that association, and that's where I started, and it went up from there. Well, I was on council for a few years at the association, and then eventually become vice president and president of the association.
So I first became a professional engineer in Nova Scotia when I was working, and when I moved to New-Brunswick, I registered, obviously. I became involved shortly after that as a member of the Fredericton branch, and then due to my jobs moving around the province a little bit, and moved to the St. John area and became a member of the St. John branch executive, and then ran for council and became a member of council, and then was president in 2005 and served also as the Engineers Canada director from 2007 to 2013.
Yes, a number of things. I can't think of one. One of them that sticks in my mind is Sheila McLeod was our executive director at that time, and she thought I should represent the association at the Canadian Engineering Qualification Board, CEQB, which I did for a year, and I felt like a fish out of water because they were all academics, and there were two on the board that weren't, and myself and a guy by the name of Alex Hemstock from Alberta. Well, they were focused on the academic side, the education of engineers, not so much the practice of engineering, but it was all about what engineers should do how they should be educated to become engineers. We found it a very interesting experience, a very different point of view toward engineering than we had, for sure.
Yeah, several. One, I guess it stands out. It's such a short term. 1 year goes by rather quickly in council's time, and you get to represent the provincial association nationally at various national meetings with your counterparts from other provinces. And one that really hit home for me at the annual meeting of what was then CCPE, the Canadian Council of Professional Engineers, was the demographics of our council, listening to the other associations. We had an average age that was well below what seemed at the time the national average. We had a better representation of male, female on our council. We had what at the time I felt was a very diverse council compared to what I was seeing, and that was a proud moment. Just listening to the conversation, I remember saying in my remarks going around the table that what we had, and some people seemed envious of that. So it was just the youth that were coming on council and getting involved. It was good. It felt good to be representing that. Oh, it was a tremendous honor to become president within a decade probably after Dad was. Dad had been on council before, and so I knew about the commitment of council and what that meant. Growing up, I grew up in a household where engineering was considered not just a great profession, but an honorable profession. Dad his work, with the associates that he chummed around with. Many of them are past presidents of the association. So it was, I knew what that meant, and was quite humbled by it. And Dad was able to, credit to Brian Barnes, was able to bestow the chain of office on me that night, and that was quite a humbling experience. So.
A very proud moment. Yeah, just to see that my son had decided to support the profession in that way, and then of course when he eventually became president of the Canadian Council, then that was even more so. No, I don't think so. I think at the time there was always some issue that was hot on the board at the time, and you very quickly get wrapped up in that. And there was always something new every year that came up, and I think we were working toward, even when I was president, working toward the geoscientists becoming members of the association. So I always found it very challenging and very interesting. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the experience. For the most part, it's the people you meet, that lasting relationships, not just in the province but around the country. A couple things stand out. I guess, as I mentioned before, it's a short term. For the 1 year, it seems like a long time, but it's a short term. So there's always issues bubbling that never really come up and then get fully addressed within the year. It's rare. But there were a few things going on at the time. We started the concept of limited licensure. It was something I brought back from a couple of the other provinces I visited. And in its infancy, I guess just the notion of it is something that kind of stuck, and we worked with in future councils, and it's still something that may come to us, that will have to come back, that we will have to address. We were starting to select our new office location. We selected the land, the site, the brownfield site on Hanwell Road, made use of that space, which from an engineering perspective was good. But those are some of the key ones that stand out for me from that time. Well, there's lots. I was on council for 12 years in some capacity or another, so lots of times. I guess a couple stand out. I think I was affectionately known as the protocol police by some of the younger councillors, and it was I took it as a term of endearment, because I think what I was trying to do was make sure we're ourselves following rules and our procedures, policies, etc., just so we didn't get out of step, because it was easy to do. And I guess another one that was kind of stands out, I was asked at a council workshop one time to play the devil's advocate, and in a role I wouldn't normally play, on a position I normally wouldn't play, and I had some fun with that, and I got the attention of the room by challenging the position on the floor, which shocked a lot of people. And then it was one that I believed that we should be doing, and had been a past proponent of, but the council at the time, I was asked to take a different view, and by the moderator, and I think what we have a one-word explanation of how I interjected, so it's common amongst those that were there that day, but can't be repeated on film. When they found out after, we all had a good laugh, and we still do to this day.
One of the important members of the governing body was the executive director, who eventually became known as the CEO. And but in my time, it was when I started, it was Sheila McLeod, who was very aggressive and made sure that you knew what you were doing when you went somewhere. So. I just felt that I was much more a part of the engineering profession when you see it from a whole different perspective when you're on council and when you're president. You appreciate the responsibility you have to make sure the public are well served by the profession, and you take that very seriously.
I guess growing up in Dad's shadow and knowing the relevance of the association and its importance, not only as a regulator but a representative of the engineering community, that it had an important role, and I felt personally fulfilled of doing my bit to give back to the association, and I personally got a lot out of it. From learnings from interacting with various people of various backgrounds, and that's one of the main things I'll take away from it. But I find that if anything sticks with me, it's how important it is for our membership to realize that we exist in the public interest to protect the public by our legislation, not as a membership club for members. And so there's that balance that we have to keep in the back of our minds at all times.
I think it's the ability to protect the integrity of the association by our actions and what we do, and making sure our members are qualified and all those issues. There's always you always sometimes get the feeling that a lot of particularly government organizations don't see it as a big deal that you're properly qualified and that that it is a profession. It's not just a technical chore. But I think we've made some progress in that regard.
I would say some of the biggest risks I see in the next 50 to 100 years would be self-regulation. And it's not because it's a control thing, but I think it's important to be at arm's length, but to show as a profession that we can protect the public interest, which is the chief mandate in our act. That the public interest is served and protected. I think we do that well. It's a model that's worked well for 100 years. I see it working well for the next 50 to 100. One of the interesting parts for me, though, too, in the next 50 to 100 years is issues that have come up in the past generally resurface. And what I mean by that is it was interesting that one of Dad's colleagues, who was a past president in the 80s, had sent me a letter after I was the national president, and of some of the issues they were dealing with at the day. And this was, some 30 years later. And it was interesting that some of them were still coming back around or bubbling up again. So it's something that will always happen, but it's to be cognizant of that and know we've been down these paths before, and to know the history of them, to understand them, so that you can make better decisions going forward.
It's extremely important because in the working world, and particularly the public side, the government side, is they don't necessarily understand the importance of that professional control. Anybody that comes along and says, "Oh yes, I can do that job," may or may not be qualified to do that. And so it's up to us to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that it's not about exclusion, it's about inclusion, but ensuring that a qualification here meets a qualification somewhere else, and that they're compatible, and that we're getting qualified individuals to practice and that are licensed here to practice in New Brunswick.
I don't know, I say not to lose sight of what we're about and what the importance that we do, the important role that we do play in the protection of the public. Because now and then it happens that there's somebody falls through the cracks and they get to do engineering and they're not qualified to do engineering.
I would encourage them to make sure our profession continues to be relevant, that it continues to work towards being more diverse than it is today. I know we still have a ways to go to meet our targets of 30 by 30, but it's to continue to strive for excellence, really, and just maintain the relevance of the profession and protecting the public interest. Yeah, so my first piece on council was on the CEO task force to hire the CEO, and Andrew's been involved ever since I was involved on council. So we spent a lot of time together and worked together quite a bit. He was very helpful when I was national president. Andrew was actually the representative of the national CEOs. I was an ex officio member of our executive committee, so it was helpful to always have his perspective, and he was very good with supporting me and knowing the feel of the room around the country, and making sure I understood that. So.
No, I don't think so. I think the profession is healthy, alive and well, and I think it's our job as professionals to make sure it stays that way. And I think we're off on a good, making a good effort in that way. So.
I guess one of the additional risks I see is what happened with Dad was he was working for a very involved, very supportive company in the profession. A lot of companies are getting busier, and they don't seem to take that time to encourage or have those mentors to encourage the people to get involved in the association or to run for council or just to be involved in a committee or something. And I'm concerned that if that kind of trend continues, and we see it all over society, not just within engineering, that it may be a risk to the profession. But I would encourage everyone to, within their own organization in some capacity, be a mentor for somebody, help them get involved, introduce them to the association and other members to get involved, and don't let that slide.